There's a quiet genius behind medieval craftsmanship that rarely gets the recognition it deserves. Long before synthetic sealants, pressure-treated lumber, or chemical preservatives existed, medieval builders were constructing timber beams, bridges, barns and fortresses that endured centuries of weather, moisture and decay. Some of the beams inside medieval churches today are over 800 years old, still strong, still bearing weight, and still resisting the rot that destroys modern lumber in a fraction of the time. This wasn't luck, it wasn't magic. It was deliberate, practiced skill, a set of preservation methods that kept wood stable, dry and rot-resistant without a drop of tar or a stroke of paint. What makes these methods so valuable today is that they still work, and anyone, from a woodworker to a homesteader, can use the same principles. The story begins with an understanding that medieval builders knew their materials intimately. They knew how wood behaved, how moisture travelled, how decay began, and what conditions invited rot. They didn't try to fight nature, they worked with it, manipulating airflow, wood anatomy, and natural treatments to create structures that survived centuries of storms. When we look at their methods today, they offer something modern sealants simply can't. Preservation that is sustainable, natural and, well, unbelievably effective. The first secret was choosing wood at the exact right moment. Medieval builders didn't cut trees whenever convenient. They were patient. They felled timber during the dormant winter months, when sap levels were lowest and the moisture content in the tree was naturally reduced. Wood cut in winter has far less nutrient-rich sap for fungi and insects to feed on. It dries more evenly, shrinks less, and, it resists rot more effectively. Builders in Scandinavia, England, France and the Germanic regions followed this seasonal harvesting pattern religiously. They understood that rot often begins not because wood is exposed to moisture, but because the internal chemistry of the wood invites microbial activity. By harvesting when SAP was low, they removed half the problem before construction even began. A modern woodworker can apply this same principle by sourcing winter-cut timber, or, if harvesting personally, cutting trees between December and February. Even today, winter-harvested wood dries faster, lasts longer, and performs better outdoors, no chemicals required. The second method involved removing the vulnerabilities before they caused problems. Medieval carpenters knew that the outer sapwood layer is the weakest part of a tree. Sapwood absorbs water readily and rots quickly. Heartwood, especially from species like oak, chestnut, larch and cedar, contains natural oils and resins that protect it for centuries. So, instead of leaving the log intact, builders often hand-hewed beams, using axes, adzes and broad chisels, removing the sapwood entirely. This wasn't done for aesthetics. It was actually a deliberate preservation technique. A hand-hewn beam with exposed heartwood resists moisture, fungi and insects far better than a modern dimensional lumber board where sapwood often remains. Many surviving medieval beams are square-cut, exposing dense heartwood that is, well, nearly stone-like. Anyone building an outdoor structure today can use this practice by selecting heartwood-heavy species or removing sapwood from exposed beams. Even shaving off a shallow layer can dramatically extend the life of posts, rafters and joists. The third technique was to design buildings so wood stayed dry naturally. Medieval builders understood that rot is not caused by water alone. It's caused by water that stays trapped. Their architecture reflected this. They elevated posts off the ground, used stone bases to separate timber from soil moisture, and designed wide roof overhangs to shed rain far from the walls. Ventilation was intentionally built into roofs, walls and joints, so, moisture never lingered long enough for fungi to take hold. Timber frame buildings used peg joinery instead of metal fasteners. Wooden pegs expand and contract with humidity, just like the beams around them, allowing joints to breathe instead of trapping moisture. In contrast, iron nails in wooden structures often create moisture pockets that accelerate decay. This design philosophy offers, some really practical lessons for modern constructions. Raising garden beds using stone risers, placing shed posts on gravel-filled holes instead of direct burial, or, ensuring air circulation around fences and decks are all contemporary applications of medieval logic. Keeping wood dry by design, honestly, costs nothing and actually outperforms many modern sealants. The fourth method relied on natural preservatives already found in the environment. Contrary to myth, medieval builders didn't coat everything in tar. Tar was used in shipbuilding and roofing, but inland timber structures were more often treated with natural oils, tannins, and smoke. Wood stored in smokehouses or smoke-dried above hearths absorbed antimicrobial compounds that hardened and darkened the surface. Oak beams soaked in tannin-rich water from bogs developed a dark, rot-proof patina. Builders also applied animal fats or linseed-type oils to seal exposed end grain. These methods worked because they altered the chemistry of the wood in ways fungi couldn't tolerate. Anyone today can replicate the simpler versions of these techniques. End grain sealing with natural oils, heat curing small components over low smoke, or using tannin-rich solutions from oak leaves or acorns can be effective for preservation without chemicals. The final method was patience. Slow curing created long-lasting durability. Fresh timber can twist, split and rot if rushed into service. Medieval builders seasoned their wood slowly with good airflow, often for months or even years. This slow curing stabilized the timber and reduced internal moisture to levels where rot could not easily take hold. When dried properly, heartwood becomes, dense and resilient, capable of surviving for centuries, really. Now, a modern homesteader may not have years to wait, but even allowing lumber to air dry for several weeks before use can, dramatically improve its durability. Protecting stacked lumber from rain while still allowing free airflow, well, that actually mimics the medieval approach, but with a touch of modern practicality. If this deep dive into medieval wood preservation has given you a new respect for old-world craftsmanship, well, subscribe to Echoes of Valor for more historical methods that still, honestly, outperform modern shortcuts. Share this guide with anyone who works with wood, builds by hand, or, just appreciates the forgotten brilliance of our ancestors. Their methods endure because they were built on knowledge, not chemicals. And really, it's time we brought that wisdom back into practice. Echoes of Valor.